Okay, so it's time to start. Hooray! So let's go to Cyber Campus and do the smart attendance thing and this. And then see, okay, all right. So, and we go to English, and then we go to Cyber Campus, and then we go to log in. Let's go English first. And then go to this, and then this, go here, space. Okay, so here we go here to methodology and go to attendance and go to week 11 and go add, and your smart attendance number is 889. So we go to 889 and go to chatting 889 889. There you go. Okay, so all right, so we did the debate on Wednesday, so we won't have that in-class debate today. But I should tell you that next Wednesday when we meet, everybody will be coming to class. Hooray! May 18th, we go back at CUK to having everybody come to class. Although we'll still be required to wear these, I think. So yeah, so next week, more people will be here, and it'll be maybe a little bit different because everybody will be here to participate. Okay, so let's go on then to my notes here and open up the methodology and make sure. I got to remember always to make sure that I'm sharing the screen because I'm not certain if it is sharing the screen. So we go here and we go to methodology and lesson plan and open this up, and we go and we see here that okay, so let's just go to the notes then. And let me open up the notes for today's class. And so also I want to try to make important or relevant to you to understand how the topics we're covering in this class are still controversial and problematic. So here is something which appeared, I think yesterday or today in the New York Times, which she said is like the agenda setter for news coverage, at least among authoritative legacy news organizations. Oh, okay, share the screen. So like this, go share screen. And so you can see here that it says here, this is from, yesterday. It says here in this news report of former Vice President Mike Pence, who is Donald Trump's vice president, and it will run for president if Donald Trump doesn't in the upcoming presidential election. He's addressing a conference of energy companies that produce oil and gas energy in Texas, the capital of the oil industry in the United States. And she said that he wanted to rein in ESG. That's not MSG. Ha ha ha. ESG, economic, social, and governance principles as being factors in shaping corporate strategy and corporate management and administration. Boo, ESG, he's saying that companies should not be taken into consideration or focusing on their environmental, social, and governance impacts of their business administration policies. And of course, that relates to what Trump and Arsen Hampton-Turner talk a great deal about, that you should take into consideration the local considerations of the local culture. I mean, actually, I haven't really had a chance to think much about this because this just came out today here. But that's what Trump and Arsen Hampton-Turner would seem to me to be indicating, that you've got to be sensitive to the cultural context. So, yeah, you don't have any choice in multinational corporate activity but to take into consideration local governance and environmental and social requirements. I mean, Trump and Arsen Hampton-Turner make that point in their chapter about, for example, if your corporation is committed to promoting females and equal representation of gender diversity, and you send a promising female young manager to get her international experience in your company to Turkey. I think that the example he uses is Turkey. Turkish culture and Turkish men are not going to react well to her. So if you want to set her up to fail, send her as the corporate manager or director for the Ankara, Turkey bureau of your company. because she will generate hostility. There will be a hostile reaction against her, and she will not be effective, and she will be blamed. So don't do it. So in a sense, you have no choice, Trompenaars and Hampton Turner would say, but you have to take into consideration the local Turkish or Korean or Japanese or American or German or Italian or Greek or French, their local expectations of those societies about what a good business person and business leader and manager, how they act and how they behave. And of course, they give you, examples of 4 general types: the Weberian ideal typical models, the family model of the corporation structure that predominates in Southern Europe, the guided missile model, which dominates in America, the Eiffel Tower model, which dominates in France and Germany, and the incubator model, which supposedly dominates in Silicon Valley in the United States. But those are just 4 abstractions. So he goes on, but he's talking here, I guess, mainly to companies that are based in the United States, that Americans are supposed to be focused upon specific tasks, these general universal obligations, or responding to environmental constraints is not supposed to be something you should do outside the context of how you maximize your profit. Some notable names are pushing back as businesses get increasingly tangled up in cultural and political fights, and as the federal government builds ESG principles into regulations. A new financial firm, Strive, started by Vivek Ramaswamy, the author of Woke Incorporated, and backed by billionaire investors Paul Thiel. He's a big Trump supporter. Paul Thiel, he invented PayPal and Palantir, and maybe some other, and Bill Ackman, I don't know anything about him, has a similar mission. It will urge companies not to get involved in social, political, or environmental issues. Notably, I mean, again, Trompenaars and Hampton Turner claim that if you want to have market share growth and dominance in the local market, you might well need to engage in what is called, in older terms, corporate philanthropy. He says, for example, why not spend some money helping the local villagers in Nigeria that has oil and gas drill for some water wells, so for some fresh water for their village. It will make those people living in the village happy. They will be more supportive workers, and you will make more money in the long term. So they're arguing that ESG principles, as applied in the local context in which you are working, that's good business sense. But this goes on here. Notably, even BlackRock, an outspoken leader in sustainable investing, is stepping back, saying in a memo on Tuesday that it is supporting fewer shareholder proposals on climate disclosures this proxy season than last, because many are too constraining and prescriptive, that these corporate boardrooms are being pressured by their shareholders and also their employees. This is an important point that's not really mentioned so much in this report. Employees in Google or employees in McDonald's, well, not necessarily McDonald's so much, in Google or Alphabet as it's called, or employees in Facebook, or employees in Twitter, or employees in business at Disney World in Florida. They're the ones pressuring their corporate managers to be involved in ESG principles, to stand up against local government officials in Florida, for example, forbidding the discussion of gender identity in schools. So that's a point, that this focus on ESG reflects the changing nature of your human resource pool. That's a topic in the Trompenaars and Hampton Turner book. They're going to focus on the role of the human resources department, because all of these corporations now, at least in the United States, they have an HR, human resources department, and you have it here in Korea. Because the Ministry of Education, what is the full title? It's the Ministry of Education and Human Resources. So when human resource departments first emerged, that I remember when I was a small child, they were considered, that's where you went if you were not really that important to the company. The company put you in the human resources department. That was kind of a joke. I'm serious, back in the 70s. Today, human resource departments are becoming really, really important, because this is where you implement your ESG principles in terms of your hiring. The kind of people you hire, how you evaluate their performance to determine whether or not they stay your employee or get promoted. The human resources department have become extremely, well, I got to stop, make sure I don't exaggerate, but they have become very, very important. And I know, for example, this feminist issue, feminism in Korea is a big topic, right? Where is this coming out in terms of the battles that feminists are fighting? It's coming out in human resource departments. If you're a woman working, let's say, and you work for a company and you get harassed by a man at that department, where are you supposed to report that? The human resource department at your company is supposed to have a procedure in place where you can report these complaints. It's supposed to be done silently, privately, but it's a significant act, because then that human resource department is supposed to investigate, gather the evidence, and if necessary, have an adjudication or investigation. And so that's how these human resource departments have become very, very important, particularly in terms of the feminist movement, which is a big topic today in Korea. That, and I have to say, I saw it like when I was at the American University in Bulgaria. I had a lot of complaints with the management there, but they brought in a provost, and she was a female provost. She retired, and she, Bulgaria is a very masculine, manly, Balkan, macho man kind of culture. And I heard all sorts of stories about sexual harassment from students complaining about men, professors, pressuring them. And she set up a complaint procedure at that university that evidently was really effective, because I know they were getting complaints, and I never heard one bit of gossip about any kind of rumor of a complaint, of an accusation, of an investigation, not once, which, it used to be when I was at the American University in Bulgaria, you couldn't burp without everybody knowing about it. In that little town of 70,000 people, with this big American university in Bulgaria, funded by the US government, with the US ambassador visiting, you couldn't do anything. We were under a microscope. People were watching. You couldn't do anything without the whole town knowing about it. But this sexual harassment allegation procedure was set up, and evidently was really effective. The fact that I never heard one instance while I was there, of any kind of rumor or gossip, because people love to gossip. They love to rumor and gossip about everything. And but these human resource departments have become really important, because particularly the feminist movement, but not only, but particularly because of the feminist movement, and also because of the civil rights movement for Black people in the United States. So, and I think that is covered briefly in the Trompenaars Hampton Turner book at the end. It was more important in the previous edition. They had a whole chapter on human resource department at the end of that book. But the Securities and Exchange Commission is feeling the pressure this week. The agency extended the public comment period on proposed new climate disclosure rules without explanation. The move came days after Republicans on the House Financial Services Committee demanded a hearing with the commissioners, accusing the SEC, one of these regulatory agencies, of overreach and relying on short and overlapping comment periods to push a scorched earth rulemaking agenda. Supporters of the climate proposal want action. The agency's chairman argues that many companies have long measured their exposure to climate risks only with no overarching regime to make the metrics useful. But I don't want to go over the whole thing here, but just to highlight that, well, I guess maybe I will here. Societally, there is little alignment on values. Jeffrey Younger of the New York University Stern School of Business said the fights were the same in business schools across the country, with some professors backing the Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman was this Nobel Prize winning economist in the Chicago school that advocated liberalization, neoliberalism, privatization, free markets. And he became popular in the 1960s and 1970s in response to the world economic slowdown and stagnation that was occurring. And he argued, I think in 1971 in a journal article, that businesses, the only responsibility of businesses is to maximize shareholder profitability, shareholder value. Your job is not to worry about social justice. It's not to worry about democracy. Your job is to worry about maximizing shareholder value. Of course, social justice and racism and all that's important, but you leave that to the government. You as a corporation, your job is to be the most efficient and most profitable in your business as you can be to compete. And that has been under attack. Milton Friedman died like 10 years ago, but this has been under attack, particularly, with the emergence of new social movements. But backing the Milton Friedman-esque model focused on profits, and others pushing a broader stakeholder capitalism approach. But there is a profit motive to ESG, Mr. Younger told Deal Book. If shoppers and investors, that's you and me, shoppers, investors are looking for the environmentally positive offerings, then it makes sense for businesses to respond. The pushback will probably gain steam as midterm elections approach because the Republicans are probably going to win in November. At the SEC report, at the Securities Exchange Commission, in Congress and beyond, many Republicans resist climate policies, while many Democrats support them. This aligns with voter views. According to a Pew Research poll last year, only about 10% of people on the right call climate action a top concern, compared with about 49% on the left. So, all right. So my question to you is, you have created a focus group. You remember we've been doing focus groups with the New York Times on men, women, going back to work. So you have created a focus group to explore how CUK students view affirmative action in the form of gender diversity promotion in corporate governance, right? That companies should make an effort to hire more women. This is always the argument that if you have two people of equal quality, a man and a woman, and they're equal, you should give the benefit to the woman. You should hire the woman. That's the argument made for racial diversification in the United States, that if you have a black man and a white man, if they're equal, you should favor the black woman or the black man. Now, I don't know if anybody is ever completely equal because everybody's unique and different. But this generates, this is the big engine for the Republican Party today. And I think it's a big engine in Korean politics also, according to the electoral victory of Yoon Suk Yeol, right? So you know this, you know everything I just told you. You know about Yoon Suk Yeol being elected and about feminist, anti-feminist reaction being part of that win. So you're going to investigate here at Catholic University of Korea. This is a Catholic university. It's a conservative place, right? In the form of, and you want to ask CUK students, because CUK students, they want to get a good job. They want to make enough money so they can buy an apartment, which is really hard in Seoul because it's so expensive. The pandemic, the cost of living, they want to get a good job. How do they view affirmative action in the form of gender diversity promotion and corporate governance? What kind of focus group questions would you ask your participants? All right. And so please list 6 questions that you would ask. So let's just do this a little more simply. So Daewok and Munsun and what's your name? Okay, you guys get together, you're group 1, and the students that are not here will be in room 2. Come up with 6 questions. First off, who are you going to interview? Tell me who you're going to try to interview. A mix of men and women, or just men or just women? You decide. Do you want to interview 6 to 12 male students at CUK, or 6 to 12 female students at CUK, or a mix of both? And you're going to get them in a focus group. So they're going to sit together and they're going to talk and they're going to respond to each other. And they know, they might have strong feelings about this. You might have men say something and the women go, wait a second now. So what kind of question? So tell me what kind of group you want to create, of just men or just women or mix of both. And then what kind of questions you want to ask them. Okay. 6 questions. And of course, you want to have the demographic question, like their age, their gender, male or female, and also probably their family background. If they come from working class family, if they come from a family that their mother and their father works as a salaryman, as a businessman, or does the mother work? These are important questions, right? Because this might shape the response according to your theoretical understanding of sociology. All right. And of course, their age, you want to know their age. So given that basic information, what kind of questions are you going to ask them? So can you Q3 get together? Is that possible? Is that easy to do? And who else is here today? So let me see who else is here today. So we have here Moon Sun Young, Kwon Tae-ok, and you. What's your name? Are you logged in? Okay, log in. And then that means Kritika and well, there's only 4 of you here. Okay, so guess what? Kritika, work with these 3 other people, 3 other students. We'll have one group to so talk to each other. So so please join the group. And Kritika, Deakwan, and log in if you haven't yet. And come up with, decide who you want to interview, what kind of people you want to interview, all men, all female students, all male students, or both. And then based upon your decision of what kind of group you want to form, what kind of questions you're going to ask them. Okay. And I will do it as well. As I think about this, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about who to ask. And I think you remember that those face group reports that were in the New York Times, they didn't mix them up. They did a number of focus groups, but they had one group that was all men, and they had one group that was all women. And then the other groups were mixed. So if you think you want to interview just men, male students, okay. Or if you want to ask female students, okay, or both, okay, but that will shape the kind of questions you're going to prepare to ask them. Okay, so let me also, and of course, the one day I didn't bring any paper. Okay. So I'm going to select I'm going to mix the students. I'm going to interview 3 females and 3 males. And I'm going to get their demographic information. And then I'm going to ask them what do you think? I'm going to ask them about their job hopes. First question will be about finding a job. So what kind of question about finding a job? Something like, have you been looking for a job before you graduate? So you're already looking for a job. Have you been looking for a job before you even finish CUK? And that gets them talking, because you want them to feel, I'm not judging them. I'm just want their feedback. But of course, when I mix 3 men and three women, that there might be some controversy emerge. So how am I going to phrase the next question in a way that's provocative but not threatening? 2. Do you think that women and men are confronting a similar job market? See, that's a really nice, well, you can't see it here because I'm not typing it on the, I guess I could type it. Let me see if I can do this. I can put this in the chat function. I will select 3 females and 3 males. Question 1. Have you been looking for a job before you graduate? Because, I mean, these people are smart people, right? So they know I've brought them in there for a focus group, and I expect them to talk to each other. Question 2. Do you think that women and men are confronting a similar job market? Three, I'm going to ask them about having a family. When do you expect when do you hope to get married? If at all. So, so that leads into that's leading into the issue of family and buying a house and buying a car and spending the money on raising kids. And then fourth question, when do you think you might want to have children? If you want to have children, when do you think you might start? And how many do you want? Okay. 5. This is brainstorming. And then I would go back and polish these questions. If you want to have children, when do you think you might start, and how many do you want? What kind of childcare arrangements are you going to make? I mean, I've even heard this before. I remember I talked to some Korean business person at the church I went to years ago. He said, yeah, we don't want to hire females because these females, you can tell when you hire them, soon they get distracted and they start thinking about their kids. Like they're not focused on the job enough. They start thinking about, their child, taking care of their, and he openly told me this in English, this older Korean businessman at my church. He said, yeah, that's the problem when we hire females. We know that sooner or later, they're going to want to focus less on the job and more on their family and a kid. And so we know that, and we don't know if we really want to deal with that. And this couldn't have been more than 7-8 years ago. 6. And then finally get to the puncher. Do you think women are expected to give up more their career plans if they want to have a family? So I'm kind of circling around to the question about affirmative action. 7. And, given how they might respond, do you think that companies might avoid hiring women because they think women will not focus enough on the job because they will focus, because of their focus on the family. So those might be the kind of questions I think I have to have in my mind to think, what am I trying to get out of these people when I want their interview responses and the words that they provide me. Like, I guess I'm trying to understand, why do a lot of, and then again, this makes me, we talk about, you have to have this research design, then you have the research question, then you have the survey instrument, then you have no, it doesn't work that way. We lay out but it's really a circular process. So I'm laying this out, and then I realize I have to know why I have to know more fully, why am I interested in this topic? And I guess why I'm interested, because I want to know, why do people support Yoon Suk Yeol? Why did they respond to his feminism issue, his challenges to feminism? What is it? Why did they vote for him? And what was the role of reaction to feminism? And I assume it's got something to do with the traditional notions of what a family is, and the role of a man and a woman in the family, and who should be, primarily focused on bringing money home for the family. All of that's in there. Okay, so let's see. What kind of questions did you come up with? So let me ask, who's going to speak? Let me flip a coin. And heads, it's Young Jun Shin or Moon Soon Young. And it's heads. So Young Jun Shin is heads. It's tails. So Moon Soon Young, what questions did you come up with?
Can you hear me? I just complete the full question about these questions. Then I think about the foreign workers working at Insadong or Itaewon, because they are working at the different the place that gathering the different races and different gender at most. So the first question that I made is, have you ever worked at restaurants where lots of Philippines are working? 2, did you have ever get paid from CEO? Then whoever the CEO is, Philippine or South Korean, heard about the gender matter, about the fear tips, or did they focus on this matter? 3, the other co-workers mentioned about the feminist or equality about Korean society. 4, if the situation broke about the different about the, I've done with just 4 questions, so I must make 5 and 6. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have questions?
Okay, for me, I selected my focus group, male students in CUK, and I want to ask, only male students, and I want to ask, did you finish military duty? And the second question is, do you think compensation is needed for a 2-year career break in recruiting market? And still goes on, and do you think you should get more advantages because you finished military duty? And in Korea, do you think is there still gender inequality? And do you think only male conscription is inequality in employment? So
You see, I hadn't thought about that. It's very important. Right?
Yeah. So my last question is, Yoon Suk-yeol got elected because a lot of young Korean men support him. So do you also think his meritocracy affected his election?
Okay. you have questions? Not about the military service. That is something that seems to be could well be significant here.
I have 6 questions, but one was same with him that first is, do you think is it right that only male should be recruited? Is it right? And second one is, where you born? Because I think in Korea, Seoul and nearby Gyeonggi is very modernized, but not Seoul, such as Chungcheong or Jeolla is still the male's power is stronger than females. So I think that can be affected to their perspective of gender. So
Where they're from, yeah.
yeah, yes, I think so. And third one is in your family, do you think not think when you're young or now, is it don't care, dad and your parents had both worked? Because it can be easily fired when they have child to female. So I think it's better that female working, that who having a child and it can many female not female, so mothers in Korea or worldwide, they don't work. So who that mother or work or not work is can be matter. This problem. And next one is, do you think that marriage is essential? Because I don't think it's not essential, and I think many millennium ages don't think that essential because they have much value in their dreams, not making family. So it can be different in people and people, but I think it's matter to those problems. So because only male male cannot make children, so it can be a stereotype of the males or me that, and female don't think like this, like marriage is not essential. So I think it's matter. And fifth one is, do you think it's unfair who has baby or pregnant that filed by company, because it can be easily fired who have baby or pregnant because they can not focus on work because of her baby. Last one is, do you join in online community such as social network service, not for chat? Because and if you do you think this community affect to your perspective on gender? Because there are many conflict in online community between female and males nowadays. So
Yeah, I mean, I had thought about the role of SNS and social media, and that's obviously really important, like in American politics. So that could be another factor to want to investigate. What role did is social media playing in Korean society, including Korean politics? I mean, it's been critically important in the United States, critically important in terms of exacerbating tensions. And this military service issue, that comes up in the American Western reporting on Korea repeatedly, that this issue of universal male military service, its impact and significance, like men are already paying a price because they have to sacrifice 2 years of their life to do something that most of them think is useless, pretty much. They supposedly don't learn much at all from that. These are all important kinds of issues that might be worth delving into further to find out what is the source of this reaction that supposedly, according to the New York Times, was an important issue in the presidential campaign. And all I know is what I read in the New York Times. So these kinds of research questions go deeper. And, you know, of course, we all know about Korea and being divided between North and South Korea, that South Korea is still technically in a state of war with North Korea, that's critically important in somehow affecting the development of South Korea. That's very different from, say, Japan or United States or France, because those are not nations that are divided into two different states through military conflict. Germany was, obviously, but that was a while ago. And how does that affect the development of South Korea's so-called post-materialist values in terms of new social movements like feminism? That somehow has to critically make a difference, I would think, between South Korea's development as a modern developed society and Japan's development as a modern developed society. And it's how it impacts the causal mechanisms, the institutional mechanisms that cause the differences between Korea's development and Japan's development. They have to be explained. And one way that can be explained, of course, it has to be this mandatory universal military service that is still justified and required because of the Korean War and the partition of Korea. At the same time, because of this partition, Korea appears to be more open to international influence. Like South Korea began bringing more international workers into South Korea long before Japan. Japan is still struggling to make itself accept that it needs to bring in people to work in Japan to do difficult, dirty, and dangerous work in construction and agriculture. It's so much slower in Japan because Japan is a nation state. The state is supposed to protect the nation is in Japan. But South Korea is competing with North Korea for influence in the world. And South Korea is all about global Korea. It's so modern, it's so progressive, it's dealing with climate change, and it's the headquarters for the International Climate International Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, and it's a pandemic vaccination manufacturing center, you know, which Japan is not so much oriented in that direction because it's not in a state of war. So all of these issues, they're interesting. And all the New York Times reporters, they just report on a superficial level. But you got to go deeper through this kind of research that you've been nicely set out here to get us thinking about how to begin to think about how to do this. Okay, so let's Kritika, what questions do you have?
My questions are similar to what's already been said, and I agree with what Yongchun said about we're asking about where they're from and how that could affect what they think about gender equality. But I think I focus on their major, like why they chose to study what they did and what influenced them to choose to study that. Like, could it be because there's more opportunity for them as a man or as a woman? For example, if it's a man, did he choose this major and eventually work in that field where it's male dominated? Or for a woman, did she choose it because it's female dominated? And just ask them about the gender equality situation in the job field that they're looking into applying to.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just realized I have to shut down the computer so I can have time to record